and welcome to Nerdy Psychology. So glad you came back to join us for our second episode to our Fighting Fair rules. So this is part of that series of our relationship challenge that we can learn to have happier, healthier, more connected relationships. I'm so excited you came to join us back. If you're new to the channel, welcome. I'm Dr. Angel, and I am your host on this journey. If you missed the first half, no worries. It's in the playlist for relationships. Looking forward to getting into this topic today. Let's dive right in. We're about to level up our conflict skills. So, what does fighting fair actually look like? Well, here's the deal. Fighting fair is about tackling the problem, not the person. It's about building the relationship, not burning it to the ground. Staying focused on the issue. If you're arguing about the dishes, don't drag in their taste in music or that they left their clothes all over the floor. It's one issue at a time. It's easy when we're upset to all of a sudden remember like all the things the other person might have done to upset us or hurt our feelings. But we have to be mindful to take one issue at a time. Some suggestions I give people sometimes is keep a journal when you're starting that resentment growing, or you feel like there's a lot happening between you and another person. And this doesn't have to just be romantic relationships. This can be any kind of relationship. Keep that journal, write down those things and decide which ones are the higher priorities, and take one and have a meaningful, serious discussion that can be productive and helpful. The next one is using I statements. Instead of saying, "You're so selfish," trying to say, "I feel overwhelmed when I'm the only one cleaning up." I get it. We hear I statements a lot. It's become like this almost over talked about cliche in our culture and space. However, we're really not implementing it or using it. And well, I statements, they break down defensive barriers. They give opportunity for discussion. I statements are about us. They're about us taking responsibility for our actions or our feelings. They do not assume the other person is intentionally upsetting us. And well, it can lead to a lot better understanding. It's hard to argue when someone's telling you, "I feel overwhelmed," or "I feel not important when you don't call me back," or "I feel." Then we have opportunity to really go, "Wow, I didn't realize that." So it opens that floor for discussion. When we say the you, we're coming at, we're blaming. When we say I, we're working with. And with is how we fight fair. Taking turns speaking. It is not a debate team competition. Listen first, understand second, and then respond. Resist the urge to be thinking of your responses while the other person's speaking, or better yet, trying to come up with that perfect zinger. We need to resist that urge to do that. It's not helpful and it hurts. We need to listen, to understand, and then respond. Do not interrupt. Stop, breathe, and listen. Ask those follow-up questions. What does that really mean to you? Or what does that look like? Or how can I support you? Or how can we resolve this? Or what could be a solution? Or what outcome do you think we could find? Or is there a compromise? Timeouts are completely acceptable. And what makes a timeout different from, let's say, stonewalling or the silent treatment is a timeout is just that. It's a break. We're going to stop the conversation and we're going to take this predetermined break. So if things get heated, taking a 20-minute break to cool down. We have to make sure we're coming back to that conversation. Timeouts are not conversation over. We're just going to forget about what happened. No. So often we get busy, we get sidetracked, the emotions settle down, and we let that issue go to the side, and it wasn't resolved. And that's where resentment lingers when we're not addressing the issues. So, taking a break is completely healthy. In fact, it can be really helpful. Get a hold of your emotions. Maybe think about what you're really thinking. You do not have to have all the answers right there in the moment. Maybe there's distractions, or maybe you have obligations and things that are on your mind, and you're unable to give this conversation your full focus. Set a predetermined time that we can come back and we can deal and we can talk. So, walk the dog, sleep on it, whatever we need to have that predetermined amount of time that we can come back to this. So, if you say, we're just going to finish this later, unfortunately, later is never going to happen. It just never comes. So, and try instead saying, okay, I need a timeout. Can we talk about this tonight right after the kids go to bed? Another couple I worked with, we'll call them Jenna and Mike, they decided to pause their argument the moment it started to get heated or the emotions started getting hot. Then they would go to their separate spaces and they would write down their feelings, and then they would share them when they were both calm. It transformed how they communicated, and it became more productive instead of explosive and emotional. Because words we use when we're angry are the words the other person is going to hear playing around in their head over and over. And so when we call them names, when we do things, go to the jugular, so to speak, when we use that thing against them, that's the most painful thing that we know to that person. How can we tell them I value you and I love you when we're willing to pretty much stomp on them when we're having an argument? We need to seek resolution, not victory. This is a mindset change because there is no winning an argument. There is no winning an argument in relationships. It's not I win, you lose, you win, I lose. It's not that dichotomy at all. Arguments, they are not about winning or losing. We need to shift that mindset. I hear this so often, and we get so stuck in our mind that if I compromise or if I give in, that I lost. But is there really a winner? You could win an argument, but lose a relationship. Would that be worth it? No. Arguments and conflicts are about understanding and resolving to move forward. Think about what you're really wanting in the relationship or to accomplish the conversation. And if you're unsure, put that time out and take some time to reflect on that. But this is not about winning or losing. I cannot tell you the number of times in counseling sessions with families or couples, I hear this language constantly. Well, she's winning this one, I guess, or he's always winning, or whatever, or I'm always a loser every time we have an argument. Stop. We can't have winners or losers in caring, committed relationships. We can compromise, and maybe this time we will do the thing that's important to you. And then maybe next time we compromise and it goes the way that's important to me. But the aim of the argument or of the conflict or the discussion should not be victory. It should be progress. Validate feelings, even if you don't agree. Saying something like, I can see that you're really hurting right now. Or I can see you look really angry with me right now. That can go a long way. Feelings are real, and there's no such thing as wrong feelings. All feelings are acceptable, and we do not get to decide how another person should be feeling in that moment. We are not inside them, and we do not get to identify that. We do not get to project that on them. We get to understand that person. So we want to provide that empathy, and that's the important part here. We want to make the other person feel valued. After all, this is an important person in your life. This is a person that you care about in some capacity that has meaning and value to you. And so we want them to feel valued, not devalued in this process. And we want them to feel heard. Now, it may take a while for us to understand completely, but we can give that empathy even if we're not quite able to understand exactly what's happening in that moment. The next one's kind of a doozy. Apologize when necessary. Own your mistakes. It's a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness. We need to be real, be real, be real. We all make mistakes. We all get petty. We all do something we shouldn't do. We all say something we shouldn't say, or we forget to do something we said we were going to do. We have all made mistakes. So often, when someone makes a mistake and a person they value has a conversation and brings it to their attention, they do this like double down when they're in that middle instead of just saying, hey, I dropped the ball. When we do not own our mistakes and apologize and take responsibility, we are destroying the trust of that relationship. And trust is a foundation to relationships. The next one is stick to the present. Focus on the issue at hand, not every argument you've ever had. As Nietzsche said, it's not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhappy marriages. I'll repeat that. It's not a lack of love, but a lack of friendship that makes unhealthy marriages. Fighting fair is all about preserving the friendship, the relationship, the connection. All right, let's get actionable. Here's how we can start fighting fair today. What do we do to move forward? Here's some actionable steps. First, start with empathy. Ask yourself, how is the other person feeling right now? It's not about agreeing, it's about understanding. Set ground rules. Whatever person, relationship, or partner this is, set those rules with that individual, not when they're in the middle of a disagreement or a conflict, before we ever need to use those rules. So maybe your rules will be something like, oh, we're not going to name call, and we're not going to yell, and we're not going to interrupt, and we're not going to bring up unrelated issues, and we're not going to storm out or stonewall and shut down. Agree on the rules of engagement, so to speak, before you need them. This is a tool that we will bring into those conflicts when we have them. But when so often most of us are going into conflicts or hurt feelings or disagreements, and there's really no ground rules. So it's kind of all happens, except it hurts and it leaves scars and damage and some instances that can't be repaired. And if this person is of any meaning to you, then we need to stop and go, okay, what will those rules be? For some of those relationships that might be a little bit more not as close, that we're going to sit down and talk about, oh, when we have a disagreement, what are our rules going to be? Maybe it's a coworker or kind of a friend that's at a little bit more of a distance. Maybe you have the rules for yourself. I am not going to engage in a conflict or an argument if there is name calling, yelling, these things. I'm not participating in that because I don't want to do that to another person that I have any care or respect for in any way, because it reflects me, not what the other person has done. And so we want to make sure that we have some predetermined rules. I will tell you, this is one of those things I have used over and over and over. And so I have three boys, and when they were younger, I was divorced from their dad, and we had time sharing, and the rules were different at the two houses. And so I would sat down with the boys and we made our rules. And it wasn't just on how to solve arguments and conflicts, it was how we treat each other in our house. And those rules went on the wall. And every time they would come back from a visit with their dad, we sat down and we reminded ourselves of the rules of our house. This is the culture here. We'll be respectful. We'll be kind. We are not, doing something to disrespect or hurt another person in our family, whatever those rules were. And we reminded ourselves of those rules. And it made such a difference in our house. It made such a difference in how we worked around each other. The next thing is reflect and repeat. After that person has spoken, reflect or summarize what you heard. Something like, so I hear you telling me your feelings are hurt because fill in the blank. This shows you're listening. Also, it gives the person an opportunity to clarify. No, that's not what I was saying. I'm not feeling hurt because you didn't take out the garbage. I'm feeling hurt because you haven't been pulling your weight, and it's not about the garbage, it's about all the things in the house. Whatever. It gives an opportunity to make sure that we're having the same conversation. It shows we're listening, it shows we're engaged and we're active with that person, and we're really wanting and we care enough to make a difference. End with a plan. Instead of leaving things up in the air or buried somewhere to be resurrected, leave with some kind of plan. It doesn't mean the whole issue is resolved. We can agree on one small step, one thing we can do to move forward. Maybe the issue is complex and maybe it's been there for a while, and we're not going to resolve something like that in a few conversations. Sometimes we may need to go to a marriage therapist and have a third party kind of help us learn how to communicate to resolve those deep issues. However, leave our conversations, our disagreements, our conflicts with some kind of action plan. Check your body language. This is so vital when we're having a disagreement with someone, that we need to check our body language. We need to make sure we're keeping this open posture, that we're staying calm, that we're not crossing our arms or rolling our eyes as the other person is speaking, because that sends the wrong message. Even if you're that individual who kind of sits all closed in most of the time, we want to be mindful during a serious conversation of a conflict or an argument or a disagreement, that we are keeping that body language in a way that feels open to that person. Because when we start perceiving that that person is not, doesn't care, or they're shutting down or whatever, that conversation can go left side very, very quickly and become way more of an issue. And they may be perceiving wrong. Maybe you were just cold, or maybe you're just anxious and you close in when you're anxious. So try to be more mindful of your body language, especially during conflicts and disagreements. Ask clarifying questions. Don't assume. I know we all know what assuming means. We have to stop assuming and we need to ask. If you're not sure, or if you need to clarify, what do you mean by that? Or what, can you explain that to me? Or could you give me an example of what you're talking about? We need to ask those questions. What can I do to help you? Or what do you need right now? What does that look like? And so it's really important that we stop and ask those reflective questions, because we may be thinking one thing that it is completely not that thing. And that is how miscommunication happens, which just grows the possibility for more conflicts. Remember, you do not have to attend every argument you are invited to. You get to set the ground rules for you, and that's part of our boundaries. And we're going to really dive into that when we start taking in some more personal boundaries and relational boundaries, but you can set those ground rules. Some examples, like for me, I'm not going to attend an argument where I'm being berated or talked down to. I am not going to allow someone to yell at me or cuss at me or make me feel less than. I will remove myself politely and respectfully from that situation. I want to know that it's safe to have this conversation. It's also important when we are having conflicts and serious conversations Sometimes we just have to make the space and help prepare somebody that we need to have this conversation. I get it. Life happens. We are all so busy. Most of the time, we're multitasking to the max that we can possibly multitask to. We live in this run and do culture that's just constantly moving around us. And we can't have the argument or the conflict discussion while someone's cooking dinner or someone's still at work or someone's driving here. We need to prepare each other for that. And that could look like, hey, I just would like to talk about how we can improve some things. Can we talk tonight after dinner? Or can we meet for coffee? Or can we do lunch? Or prepare the person. Don't give them the line of, I need to talk to you about something so they can swirl it around in their head. Frame it in a way that's productive and positive. I'd like to talk about how we can make some improvements for us, or how we can XYZ, or how we could work on division of labor in our house because it seems to be unsettled right now. I don't know, but be creative. You can do this. I know you can do this. So just because we're in that space to have that conversation does not mean the other person's in that space to receive that conversation. And that can be the most so unproductive place to be in a conflict, is that we are not in the same place to be able to bring it to the table. And then when we're unprepared, we feel sideswiped. We're more likely to get super defensive because we're it's coming at us and we're not even sure what's happening in that moment. And we're definitely not on this emotional level to be prepared. Does that mean we can't resolve things in the moment? Of course we can. But it also means we do need to set specific time aside to have some of those more serious conversations, or more conversations that when we're feeling like we're hitting a wall, pause, stop, think, settle the emotions, gather the thoughts, and come back to having that conversation. Okay, now it's your turn. In the comments below, share one tip from today's episode that you're going to implement in your relationships. I'm excited to see how we're growing on this journey together. Before you go, make sure you like this video, hit that subscribe button. We're trying to get to 1,000 subscribers for more nerdy psychology episodes every week. We're learning and growing together. Be curious, stay kind, and keep your mind nerdy. See you next week.